All right, so now instead of having just aloha, let's ask the person their name and then we'll output their name. So that seems like a good thing to do. So I'm going to create a string and I'm going to call it name, and then we're going to see, I better see out, I better let them know what is your name. And then the idea is that we're going to print name out in the greeting. So I think that's lowercase. There we go. String name, there we go. And then I'm going to cin, and then we're going to get the name. Okay, and so the idea that I'm thinking here is that we want to be able to see out their name in our function. So, okay, so I'm going to see out, I'm going to put in name, and so that should do just that, right? It should say, okay, well, looks like I'm getting a squiggly red line. And in fact, I figured that was going to happen, because what happens when we talk about greetings or we talk about functions is we want to build them so that they are that they produce a single task. I haven't really mentioned that before. So the idea is a greeting should just do one thing. It should, in the series of statements, output some kind of greeting, because that's what it says it's going to do. So why then is, and it should also stand alone, meaning that, remember our car example, if I got in the car from home or I got it from school, the car is the car independent of being at school or independent of being anywhere else. And so when you write a function, it has to stand by itself. It has to not count on anything else. So what's happening then is, the way it's set up, and the reason why I'm getting an error is because greeting is depending upon name being set somewhere else, which is it's a complication. It defeats the purpose of a greeting. And I know right now it's like, well, it seems like it would be fine with me, but it's not. And so what's going to happen is if we want greeting to have access to name, then we have to send it to greeting. And the way to do that is through something called parameters and arguments. I'll write those words down. And I don't really care that you remember what the words are or the difference between the two, just that you know that they are. So let's see. Here's how this is going to work. I want to send whatever the name was from the user. I want to send that to greeting so that greeting can print it out. And so here's how we do it. Inside these parentheses, which is the purpose of these parentheses give us the ability to send to the function data that the function's going to need. In other words, this function needs to know a name to print out so that it won't give me this red squiggly line. And so I have to tell it, just like declaring a variable, I have to tell it what type of data am I expecting to receive, and I'm going to give it a name. I'm going to give it something different just for clarity. So what's happening here is that I'm going to send to greeting the name that I received from the user. That value is going to be put into a name. And so if I put in Kirsten, Kirsten's going to send into a name, which is a variable available just inside of this function. I'm going to change this to a name. And so I'm going to be able to print out whatever I sent. Now notice I've got some squiggly lines here, and that's because both of these greetings are saying, uh-oh, too few arguments in function call. Now an argument is, if you really want to get specific, an argument is the data that we send, and the parameter is the data that we receive. So this would be our parameter, and this would be our argument, whatever we send to it. So let me just send it name. And so, and then this one, I'll just send name again. We'll just send it twice, and then we'll see how that works. So let's just walk through this, and I'm going to use the debugger again so we can see this happening. So I'm going to put the debugger, I'm going to come to the left of 21, go into this gray panel, and click on greeting. So I want to see what happens as I move along here. So I'm going to click debug, and I'm going to say start debugging so I can watch this happen. And so things go away, and once I get my, okay, so we're waiting for, so what is your name? Because remember, my stop point is after we ask the user for the name, so I've got to put in a name. I'm going to put my name in. That seems appropriate. And so now the program has halted at the point where I have my breakpoint, and you can see the yellow arrow saying here is where I am. And so what you're also going to see down here in this window is that name is a variable and it has a value in it. So lots of other stuff too. All we care about is this at the moment. So name has a value and it has Kirsten in it, which makes sense because that's what we just put in up above here, right? So now let's step into the code. So I'm going to click on this little icon, and what we're going to see is a name has received that value Kirsten. Okay, notice that name has gone away. Where I am located at the moment, greeting cannot see name, and we saw that a little earlier when we had the error. So inside greeting, nothing else exists. Greeting doesn't know anything else exists or that there's any such thing. It just knows it received a value, it put it into this variable called a name, and it can use it whenever it wants within this context, as long as we're inside these curly braces. So let's walk through this. So now we're on line 12, so we should be able to see out, and we can see that Aloha Kirsten did in fact get see outed. I hold my cursor over that variable, and you can see that Kirsten is in there. You can see that it has a value. If I hold my cursor over name, you can see that nothing's happening because, again, based on where I am in the program, name is currently invisible. Greeting, we're in greeting, and the only things that are visible to the program right now are what's inside of this greeting. And that's called being in scope, and it doesn't really matter, but if you've heard the word scope, that means where can the program see the variable? And at the moment, the program can only see whatever variables are within these curly braces. The a name, which is a variable that was created when the greeting got started, and we sent it a value, and now we can use it. So let's continue to walk through this. So I'm on this last curly brace. I'm going to hit continue. And now what we should see is that a name has gone away. But now that we're back in main, main is very familiar with what name is. Main, M-A-I-N, is familiar with name. So we have access to name again. And then we can continue on. And the same thing's going to happen. So we're going to go back into our greeting function. Notice name goes away. We have access to a name, which is a variable that was created here in these parentheses. And then when we walk through, it'll be able to print out a name. So we're good there. So I'm going to continue on. Fantastic. So what if we put another value in name? Let's try that. So if I put in see out, enter another name, and then we'll do a cin and name, and then we're going to send that new name. So now greeting is going to get a new name. So let's just watch that happen. So I'm going to continue to finish out this program, and I'm not sure what happened. There we go. All right, so let's try debugging it again. So debug, start debugging. Things are going to whirl and spin. We're being asked, what is your name? Because we haven't gotten to this breakpoint yet. We're still on line 20, so I'm going to enter in my name again. Okay. We are now stopped on line 23, and we know that we're going to send name, which currently has Kirsten, into greeting. So we're going to continue on. Recognize that a name now is a variable that has the data that we sent it. It no longer has access to name because we're inside of this greeting. And so, oops, I didn't mean to close that up. There we go. So let's continue on, and then it's going to output Kirsten, which it did. We're going to continue on, and then we'll go to the next line. I'm finished, which we're really not finished, but that's okay. Enter another name, so I'm going to click on this icon. So again, we're going line by line. Enter another name, so our prompt has been put up. The next line is going to wait for us to enter in a name, so I'm going to hit go step into again. The cursor is waiting for me because we're on line 26 has not run. 25 is waiting for my name, so I'm going to put in Stitch and then hit enter. And now I'm going to watch what happens. So Stitch has been put into name. The reason why it's red here is just to show me that at that point in time, the value changed. So it's a way to get my attention that the value inside of name has changed. So name has Stitch in it now. It doesn't have Kirsten anymore. Remember, a name is still invisible because we're still here in the main. So I'm going to continue to step into my function. I'm now in greeting. Greeting received a new value. Greeting has a name stitch now, and you can see that if I put my cursor over a name, you can also see it down here. So that when we go to see out our information, it should see out stitch, and then we can continue on. Once I leave the function, once again, a name is no longer available to the main. Main can't see anything in here anymore because we're gone. It's like it's out of memory. It's no longer available, but name still has stitch in it, and so we're good to continue on. I'm just going to continue. We get the idea. I do want to add one more piece to this puzzle, and that is, again, because of what I've emphasized before. Let's say in this program we change a name to something different, like Bubba. Okay, so what I want you to see here is, and I'll walk through it again with the code, when we're inside this function, remember that we only have access to a name and its values, which is independent of main. In other words, if we change a name here, we are not affecting main at all. And let me demonstrate what I mean by that. So we've got our breakpoint set. I'm going to go back and debug, and we'll see this happening, hopefully. So the program is going to run. I'm being asked for my name, so I'm on line 21 of my program. I'm going to type in my name. Okay. So name, in fact, has a value. It has Kirsten, so everything looks good so far. A name is currently invisible, so if I put my cursor over the a name, I'm not getting anything because it's not in scope, or it's not available to this program yet. So I'm going to click on my little icon, and we're going to see a name currently has a value. Remember, name is invisible to us at the moment. The program is unaware of a variable named name. It only is aware of a variable named a name. So what I'm trying to get at is, as I walk through this code and I change a name, so recognize that a name is now Bubba as long as I'm inside this program. It has not affected name. When we're done with this, this has not changed what was in name. These are independent of each other, even though they have the same values in your mind. So a name gets changed to Bubba, which we didn't do anything with, so we just did it for an example. And so now when I click on step into, you're going to see a name disappeared. I don't have access to any of that anymore. Okay, but I do have access to name, and it is still Kirsten. So you have to pay attention to where your variables are, meaning that these variables are only available in this function. These variables are only available in this function. If I want this function to have data from the main, I need to send it through what we call parameters and arguments. Remember that I got an error message if I didn't send greeting something, because now greeting is saying, oh, I'm supposed to have something. I'm supposed to have some data. I guess I'm still running my code, sorry. So if I hold my cursor over here, you can even see that it says void, greeting, string, a name. So it's trying to let me know I am expecting to receive some data, and if you don't give me any data, I'm going to give you a little red squiggly line. So if I put something in here, I can put anything. I could make a hard-coded string if I wanted to. Whatever you want to put in there, but you have to send a string to this greeting, because greeting says I'm expecting a string. So if you want to use me, the key to the ignition, if you will, for lack of a better analogy, is you have to send me some data that is a string that I can use in my program.